and chief cook and bottle washer there.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. How did you become conservative? Did you have a conversion experience to conservatism on the Damascus Road, or did you grow up into it organically?
It started, I was a Christian first. I gave my life to the Lord in 5th grade, grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. As a side note, fun thing about being from Illinois is we have term limits in Illinois, a little different than most states. It's 1 term in office, 1 term in jail for our politicians. But no, in 5th grade, I made the most important decision of my life. I made Jesus Christ the chairman of the board of my life, and welcomed him into my life. And every decision from there was always instructed by my faith. I was always a conservative in the sense where I respected history. It wasn't as if I was selected for this or there was some committee that thought it'd be a good idea. It was gritty. It was very hard to convince people of this. I'm an entrepreneur. And thanks to the Lord's blessing and his providence and his grace, we started to see it grow and we started to see it start to gain some traction. Then biz important, by the way. And college teaches you all this rubbish and this nonsense that you have to deprogram. And so I had this passion, and I had not just a passion. I tell this to young people all the time, don't just follow your passion and your skill. So those two things. So you have to find something you're good at that you enjoy doing. Because if you just follow your passion, you can end up doing something you're honestly not very good at. And by the way, the Bible tells us, do not follow your heart. Bad idea. Do not follow your heart. Do not do that. Multiple warnings. Do not do that. And so this is going to be a through line of our conversation. We did something that the media thought was insane. In fact, if you ever have spare time, you could look at all the articles attacking Turning Point about a year ago, making fun of our strategy. You know what our strategy was? We're going to win by finding millions of young men that have never voted before. And the media said, that's insane. Roe versus Wade was just repealed. It's the year of the woman. Women are going to rise up in big numbers. We're like, actually, we think men are going to shock the world. And how did I know that? It's because I don't just view things through looking at data and looking at charts. That's helpful. I actually go to college campuses and talk to thousands of people, and I can see how they're processing information. I can see as I'm dialoguing. And I started to realize...
See who shows up.
See who shows up and see why they're showing up and what they're saying and how they're communicating. And no, this is you're that kind of pastor. I forgot. Gotta remind myself. And so we seized on that in the best possible way and understand, of course, at its core is a spiritual problem. And spiritual problems manifest themselves into cultural problems that then become political problems. So it's kind of a 3-pronged issue, but of course at the core it's spiritual. And so my critics say, oh, Charlie, politics, waste of time. You should only talk about the gospel. But the gospel is the most important thing. But you know how many people we have led to Christ by first talking politics? Because the law is a school teacher to Christ, as it says in Galatians 3. The law can show you towards Christ. It's a guardian of Christ's message. And I see this happen every day on campuses. And so there's something very profound happening. It's actually accelerating. It's not slowing down. Young men are becoming more and more conservative. They're more and more hungry and thirsty to get involved in the local church. We could talk about young women because they present an opportunity. Okay. Let me put that mildly.
All right.
But I do believe women will follow if men lead.
Okay. So
I fail at this all the time. I try to be better at it than not, which is, how do I have love and truth on a college campus, have an open mic for kids that need to hear it? And the honest truth is, I try to do as Jesus did in the public square, which is to show mercy where appropriate, but also have uncompromising truth standards. And so the old way of doing things on campuses, and this is where it's so wrong, and I can't believe for a short period of time I used to believe it, and then I dismissed it, which is that, okay, kids are liberal, therefore we have to go present a more liberal message to them and water down our beliefs. In reality, what they enjoy more than anything else is like the most provocative truth claim that you could say is like, men can't give birth. Like, whoa, you can get 2,000 people into a auditorium for saying that, right? What I'm getting at is that I'll give you an issue that I'm an unapologetic advocate of, despite the fact that I'm in the political minority, which is to fight for the unborn. I am resolutely pro-life in every possible circumstance, and that's not popular.
Right.
But the crowds we draw around that is amazing. And so I think to myself, I don't know if I would actually get as much attention if I was just kind of like an uncompromising squish, being like, well, I think it's just a woman's, my body, my choice. That's actually not that interesting because they could hear that from their local professor.
Right.
What's all of a sudden gets their attention, like, did he just say that there should be no exceptions for abortion? Tell me more. Step up to the mic. Tell me why you're wrong. And then all of a sudden we can use the Socratic method to ask questions. When does life begin? What is the process of human development? By what moral standard are you appealing to? What is good? What is evil? What is right? Why is it bodily autonomy? Why does the size, level of development, environment, or degree of dependency of a baby matter of its moral worth? And I've never heard this before. And I don't want to try to brag too much on what we've kind of stumbled into here, but I think this is the direction that online content and young people are demanding. Less kind of just like being in a studio reading a teleprompter, and get out in the streets, find the best ideas, let them kind of confront each other, and let anybody say anything they want at any time. And it's been an amazing success. Praise the Lord.
C.S. Lewis observed somewhere, I forget where, that when unbelievers or atheists become Christians, they almost never become liberal Christians. Right.
That's true.
They think something like, if I'm going to do something crazy,
Just go all in.
I'm going to go to the deep end. I'm going to go to Christians, the kind of Christianity where they actually.
And we are seeing more interest for the gospel, more interest for spiritual things. Because think about the world that so many of these kids at University of Idaho or Washington State were raised into. Just the last 4 years. Every secular institution failed them, and some religious, by the way, but every major power center has lied to them about almost everything that's involved them. From COVID to the vaccine, to mask mandates, to the economy, to speech, to gender norms, to sexuality. So you have the most depressed, suicidal, alcohol-addicted generation in history that is also the most secular. Something here doesn't necessarily fit. So all of a sudden there's this group of us, and I include you in this, Pastor, and I'm a big admirer of yours, that is speaking truth all of a sudden into this broken culture. And they're like, I've never heard that. That makes sense. Because nonstop, they get this nonsense on campus. And you have to wonder, why do they fight so hard? They were to differentiate from the old way of reaching out to young people. And I fell victim to this for a very short period of time, and I snapped out of it, which is only talk about economics. Don't talk about the cultural stuff. They actually want to hear about the cultural stuff. No one is telling these people to save themselves for marriage. No one is rejecting the premise that you shouldn't actually, abortion is not like a normal thing. And it pains me to say this, but some of these kids on these campuses, they think getting abortion is like getting a haircut. It's not a joke. There is zero teaching of the severity and the complexity and the inhumanity and the butchery of what goes into this action. And it's not like they're like, oh yeah, it's no different than like a cosmetic plastic surgery.
Right.
And so abortion is probably the most frequent topic I get. But the one where there is like a pathological, they get very upset is transgenderism. And I'm deeply uncompromising on that one as well, where I believe God created man and God created women, and period, that's it. End of story. That if you have gender dysphoria, it's a brain problem, not a body problem. We should not have these treatments for anybody, period, especially not minors. And I think personally, the medical establishment has not earned our trust to have any treatment for anybody of any age for this, period. Whether you're 25 or whether you're 30, I think there should be a full suspension of quote-unquote gender-affirming care for people in this country. So all that to say, transgenderism gets them very worked up. And then almost inevitably, they will then come, because I will say things like, it's a blessing to be here, God bless you, So eventually they're like, wait a second, are you like one of those Christians? And then, yeah, which by the way, I was telling the pastor here, I think I win the award for the greatest podcast contrast in a 25, as well, which is, honoring the Sabbath. It's actually my next book, all about the Sabbath. I think it's the most forgotten commandment by the Western Christianity, by far. And it is designed primarily for worship.
Right.
And so you think about it, we've basically eliminated honoring the Sabbath. It says very clearly, for 6 days you shall work, and for the seventh day you shall rest. Very clearly, that seventh day is designed for worshiping God who created the heavens and the earth. Bereshit. It literally is for that purpose.
Right. And we are up a creek when we go.
Okay, so the charge, I just needed to say that. But look, Jesus is always number one in my life. That's very important. I will bring what I know to be true into the political domain. And I believe we as Christians are called to be counselors to the king, to be counselor to the politician, as Daniel was, or Mordecai, that if I can influence for moral and righteous or good purposes. I mean, it was pretty awesome when I was able to, in the early days of this administration, advocate to President Trump, hey, I really think you should pardon all these pro-lifers that are in jail right now for the FACE Act. Amen. That was awesome. Now, I don't deserve credit, to be perfectly clear. I don't deserve credit for that, but it was really confirming that all that advocacy gave me proximity to a man with a pen that was able to get all these amazing pro-life warriors out of prison. It was pretty awesome when JD asked me, he's like, hey, should I speak at the March for Life? I said, absolutely. But it was really confirming that all that advocacy gave me proximity to a man with a pen that was able to get all these amazing pro-life warriors out of prison. It was pretty awesome when JD asked me, he's like, hey, should I speak at the March for Life? I said, absolutely.
Right.
So just little things like that where I can use the proximity that the Lord has given me to try to push for things that I believe are pleasing to the Lord.
Little things that are actually enormous things.
No, of course, but by little I mean that they add up, meaning that they are daily decisions that need to be made. Another one where, again, I don't deserve credit, but I was pushing. I said, guys, Stephen Miller and all, again, they deserve the credit. They did it, but I was a voice. We need an executive order prohibiting gender-affirming care for minors. We need an executive order saying only men and female sports. And so I, amongst many other great voices, are trying to be that counselor to the king, counselor to the president, that I believe is a biblical role.
Right.
Probably eclectic, because look, we're a membership organization, and then a lot of what Turning Point espouses are my beliefs. So I'll tell you what I believe, and then it kind of goes downstream from there, which is like, look, I'm first and foremost a Christian, and I need to just repeat that, right? I believe that we want a strong country. I'm resolutely America first. I think that it is against our own best interests to continue to engage in these neo-imperialist wars, so I'm not a neoconservative at all. I think that our own borders matter a lot more than the borders of a foreign country, and I think it's a long past time that our leaders would start to prioritize the well-being of our own citizens, not those of foreign nations. Not that crazy of a concept, right? So you can call that a nationalist, you can call that a conservative or whatever. But no, it says very clearly in the scriptures, demand the welfare of the nation that you are in, because your welfare is your nation's welfare. Jeremiah 29:7. And so I think we've far overreached. And I know that as I speak for our nation's young people, I have known, just so you understand my passionate perspective on this, from my earliest memory, we have been a nation at war. One of my earliest memories was 9/11, and we had a no-win war in Iraq and a no-win war in Afghanistan, and now we're heavily involved in a no-win war with Russia and Ukraine. And I just asked myself, could that $8 trillion have been better spent? Like, what did we get for that? And I think that philosophy at its core is one that is globalist, not nationalistic.
One of the tenets of this electoral revolution that just happened in the 2020 election was no to endless war.
And I would go even a step further, which is that you don't have to have any immigration. I know that sounds like a radical view. You actually don't have to. We have gone through plenty of periods in this country's history where we had almost no immigration, from like the 1920s to the 1960s. And I think that immigration, the sales point for immigration is always one of the following. Well, they won't do the jobs that we'll do. Okay, well, with mass robotics or AI, that's not going to be true anymore. By the way, how insulting to the American people. I think that American people with a fair wage would actually do a lot of these jobs. And so if their wages weren't always being undercut. So the other thing they say is, well, diversity is our strength. No, it's not, actually. Diversity is not a strength, okay? No, show me any country that has mass importation of foreigners and gets stronger.
Right.
Like ever. In fact, Moses specifically warned against this in the end of Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy 28.
Exactly, where he says, they will become your masters. There is like a cautionary tale there.
They will be the head, you will be the tail. Yes.
Yeah, and finally, as we care about the nation, I think the charitable way of looking at it is so right. I think there is this kind of like guilt complex that seeps into evangelicalism, which is that, well, everyone says America's awful and we're going to atone to our sins by allowing everybody that wants to come in here at all times, while they're actually not loving their neighbor. They're importing a foreigner. That's two totally different things. They're very slow to actually go help their neighbor who's an American, but somehow they want to go bring in like a Honduran or a Vietnamese, which again, if you have a good heart for that, terrific, that's fine. But a fact is this, is that America is collapsing because we are a nation of strangers. We speak different languages, we have different origin stories, we have different cultural backgrounds, and one that I think we can all agree on as Christians, we should look at Europe with shock and with awe and say that Islam is incompatible with Western civilization. That is mass migration. You're not going to convert the Muslims in big numbers to Christianity. They're going to want to convert you, and they have a lot more kids than we do, by the way, a lot. The number one birth name in London, in Birmingham, in Edinburgh is Muhammad. They seek to conquer and to grow and to explode their influence. And they're very good at it because Islam, we as Christians, we kind of dance around like, is there a political doctrine for Christianity or not? Islam makes no apology that it is a nakedly political ideology that's disguised as a religion. And they make no apology. It's well within their teaching that we come here to institute a government of a certain structure, which eventually will be Sharia law. And we're inviting that into our country. It is slow motion suicide. And the final point they'll say is like, well, the West is not having enough children. Oh, really? Well, maybe we'd have 1 million abortions every single year. We wouldn't need mass migration. Maybe if we didn't have, kids that are on the pill with birth control, we wouldn't need to import, massive amount of third worlders into our country. And so, look, I'm of the opinion that we should have a full pause on immigration, both legal and illegal. We have way too many people in this country right now. We have a public services issue. We have a wage issue. We have a crime issue. And call me radical, but again, I think the American citizen should always come first. A government is constituted to fulfill its mandate to its people. It stops at its borders. And its failure to do that has really led to the rise of Donald Trump. Is a rebellion of the men of the West. It's happening in every major country where young men are finding podcasts like ours. They're finding other, information conduits that believe in nature, believe in God's design, believe that men should have to stand up for the vulnerable, create a family, provide for the family, have to protect the weak, to fight the battles of society, to go on an adventure. This is very appealing to young men when they hear it. Family have to protect the weak, to fight the battles of society, to go on an adventure. This is very appealing to young men when they hear it. And they're not getting any of that. Instead, they get the hero's journey that they get is not the story of Abraham. It's the story of, become a social justice warrior and get a degree in sociology and go become a social worker. That's your hero's journey. To go become a guidance counselor to help kids become trans.
Right.
That's how you redeem yourself. And young men are no, that's against my soul. I'm called to go into the wilderness. I mean, Abram left his dad's house when he was 120 or something, right? I mean, you would know, it's pretty old, 70 or something. Every young boy wants that call to adventure to leave his father's home and to go do something out in the wilderness, to do something of the unknown.
Wants to slay the dragon.
Exactly. And again, I'm not the first one to diagnose this. Jordan Peterson's been on this for quite a while, right? What I'm getting at, though, is the political side is what people missed, is that there's a lot that you can call Donald Trump. No one has ever called him feminine. Is the root of the feminist lie that it comes into Christianity? When parents tell their kids, their daughters, you can do everything men can do. And that's BS. It's not true. You shouldn't say that to your sons. You shouldn't say it to your daughters. You should say you are uniquely gifted to do some things that men cannot do, and they're uniquely gifted to do some things that you cannot do.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Touched on the topic before that Christians or even conservatives are often met with hatred or judgment for expressing or even acknowledging their beliefs. So what would your encouragement or advice be to the young believers of my generation on owning, advocating, and expressing our faith in a way that won't push people away but rather touch lives?
Blessed are those who are persecuted. And so, look, being persecuted is a blessing. I think the pastor might agree with this. If you aren't currently being condemned, death threats, being trying to run out of town, you're not fighting hard enough. I mean that. I mean, look, you got to be boundary pushing. You have to be trying to, you could tell a lot of a man based on the enemies that you earn. And so Just look, in James 1, it talks all about the blessed persecution. Jesus talked about it as well. And so just take heart in the Lord, and it'll make you a stronger believer in Christian.
Yeah. Be bold, confess the faith, stand up for what you believe. And I'm afraid we have to cut it off there.